The silent moment. One afternoon, I found him sitting in the nursery, just watching our daughter sleep. He didn't say anything, didn't even blink. I knelt beside him. "What are you thinking about?" he whispered. "How someone like me got this lucky." I leaned into him, because even broken things can be beautiful, if someone believes in them. The anniversary. 2 years since the contract wedding. 1 year since the second vow. 6 months since Alira Grace was born. We returned to the same beach where everything changed. He took my hand under the stars. "Arya, if I hadn't married you out of desperation," I cut him off, smiling, "then we never would have made it here." And he whispered, just once, "Thank God. I was desperate." The letter I never sent. I found it in a drawer I forgot existed. My old letter, written the first week of marriage. Never sent. Never meant to be found. "Dear liar, I don't hate you. I pity you. But part of me still hopes you'll look at me someday and see something worth loving." He read it. His hands shook. Then he kissed me like he never wanted to stop. The night it rained again. Just like the beginning. Thunder, lightning. Heavy silence. We stood by the same window from the first chapter of our story. Only now his hand was in mine, my head on his chest, and outside, instead of darkness, it rained peace. The visitor. One morning, an old woman appeared at the gate, thin, wrinkled, holding a cane. She asked for me by name. She was Alira's grandmother. "I wanted to hate you," she said softly, as we sat under the olive tree. "But I saw the photos, the baby, your face, his eyes, and I realized, you didn't replace Alira. You saved him from her shadow." I held her hand. We cried, together. The bookstore memory. I took Alira Grace to a bookstore one weekend while Lyre worked. In the children's section, a little boy stared at her, then pointed at me. "You look like a princess." I smiled. "Do I?" He nodded. "But you look sad too." And just like that, the tears welled again, because sometimes, happiness still remembers where the sadness began. The man he became. Lyre became more than a husband. He became a father, a partner, a protector. And when I watched him reading bedtime stories, or cooking with one hand while holding our daughter with the other, I knew he had become the man Alira would have wanted him to be. And maybe, just maybe, the man I was meant to love all along. A storm, a fever, a fear. Alira Grace caught a fever. High, dangerous, sudden. We rushed her to the hospital in the middle of the night. Machines beeped. Doctors murmured. Lyre sat in the corner, head in his hands, shaking. "I can't lose her," he whispered. "Not her. Not this time." I placed my hand over his. "We won't, because this time, we're fighting together." The dream. That night, as I dozed in the chair beside our baby's bed, I had a dream. Alira stood beside the crib, soft smile, gentle eyes. She looked at me. "Thank you for loving him when I couldn't anymore." I woke up crying, and the fever had broken. The newspaper headline. "The Ice King has melted Lyre Thorne's redemption story." That's what the headline said when the public found out everything. The contract, the grief, the real marriage, the baby. They loved it. But Lyre, he just crumpled the paper and said, "The only story that matters is the one I'm writing with you." The birthday. My birthday. He didn't buy jewelry, didn't throw a ball. He did something better. He showed me a room, one I had never seen before. Inside were all my paintings, every sketch I ever made, framed, lit, displayed like art in a gallery. "I kept them," he said, "because you gave me color when I only saw gray." I cried like it was the first day I met him, because somehow, he saw me now, completely. Leora's wedding. She wore a silver gown, and cried walking down the aisle. And for once, Lyre didn't look like a billionaire or a broken son. He looked like a proud brother, a happy one, a healed one. And I stood beside him, holding Alira Grace, thinking, this family was born from ashes. But now, we were fire and light. The house by the sea, he built it for us, far from the city. No noise, just waves, for when we're tired of being known. He said, we spend a month there, reading, cooking, teaching Alira Grace how to walk on sand, and at night, he held me like time was finally on our side. The fear returns, a package arrived, no name, inside, a single photo, Alira's grave, fresh flowers, and written in ink, she's still waiting. Lyre burned the photo in the fireplace. No more ghosts, they don't control us anymore. And for once, I believed him, the choice. He was offered a new empire, twice the wealth, more cities, more power, but it meant moving. It meant leaving the life we rebuilt. He turned it down. I'd rather be poor with you than powerful without you. I kissed him, and that kiss tasted like forever. The auction. We attended a charity auction, for once, not as hosts, but just as a couple. He bid on a painting I admired, without a word, without a show, and when he won, he leaned over and whispered, "Because anything that makes your eyes light up deserves to be in our home." And just like that, the entire room disappeared. A shadow in the mirror. I caught it for only a moment. A figure behind me in the mirror of our bedroom. But when I turned, no one was there. Liar tightened security. But I didn't tell him the full truth, because what I saw looked like Alira. But Alira was gone, wasn't she? The hidden room. I explored the West Wing, a place I hadn't dared to visit since moving in. Behind an old bookshelf, I found a door, locked. I picked it with an old pin. Inside, dust, photos and notebooks. Alira's, her handwriting, her sketches, her pain. I wish I could run, but if I disappear, he'll break. Who was she talking about? Liar or someone else? The secrets in her journal. Over several nights, I read every page. Her words weren't angry. They were afraid. She wrote about a man, someone who stalked her, controlled her, threatened her. He says if I leave, he'll ruin Liar. I thought love would save me, but maybe I wasn't meant to be saved. I brought the journal to Liar. His hands shook. I never knew. She never told me. And just like that, everything we thought we knew shattered. The real enemy, a name surfaced. Thorne Calloway, an investor, a partner of Liar's father. The man Alira once dated before Liar. The same man now resurfacing in business circles. He was back, and he wasn't done. He always hated that Alira chose me, Liar said, and now maybe he wants revenge. Through us. The decision. We had a choice. Hide again, run, stay silent. But Liar looked at me, then at our daughter and said, "No more fear." We held a press conference, told Alira's story, exposed Thorne Calloway, and just like that, the darkness no longer had corners to hide in. The backlash, of course, not everyone believed us. Some accused us of using Alira's name for sympathy. Some called our love a fairy tale, cover up. But we stood hand in hand, because when you've already lost everything once, you don't let go of the truth again. The day in the rain. We visited Alira's grave that weekend, for the first time together. Leora, Liar, me, and baby Grace. The rain didn't stop, but we didn't move. He laid white roses. I read her final journal entry aloud. Maybe, one day, he'll be loved by someone who doesn't run. And I whispered to the grave, I didn't run. I stayed. The aftermath of truth. After the press conference, life didn't get easier. Paparazzi followed us. Protesters appeared near the estate. Some said we had dishonored Alira's name, but we held firm, because the truth, even when painful, was cleaner than a lie. The fight between us, it started small. I asked him to stop working late every night. He said he had to fix what Calloway tried to ruin. I said he was pushing me out again. He said I didn't understand pressure. I left the room. He didn't follow. It was the first time we slept in separate rooms in over a year, and I cried silently into the pillow, because I thought we were past this. The apology with a sketch. I found it on my easel the next morning, a drawing, him, holding me while I cried, written beneath it. I don't want to be the man who forgets to hold you when everything else falls apart. I walked straight into his office. Didn't knock. He looked up, eyes tired, heart full. I kissed him. And just like that, the silence between us broke. The letter from Alira's lawyer. 1 month later, a letter arrived from Alira's old estate attorney. Inside was a final will, one Liar had never seen. In it, she wrote, "If anything happens to me, I want my piano to go to Arya. She'll understand how it feels to love a man with too much silence in his soul." I sat in front of it for hours, not playing, just listening to everything Alira had left and said. Baby steps. Alira Grace took her first real steps in the music room. She stumbled right into Liar's arms. He froze, held her tight, then looked at me with tears in his eyes. She's walking. We're moving forward. And we were. The stranger in the cafe. I was alone that day. Just needed air. Went to a small cafe in the city. A man sat across from me without asking. Smiled. "You're even prettier in person." I frowned. "Do I know you?" "Not yet. But I know him. And I know how to break men like Liar." He slid a note across the table and disappeared. Inside the note, A photo of Liar's late mother, tied to a name we never expected. Thorne Calloway's father. A secret in blood. We followed the lead. Old birth records. DNA tests. Buried documents. The truth. Illyra's mother and Liar's mother weren't the same woman. They were sisters, which meant Illyra wasn't just his wife once. She was also his cousin. A scandal that had been hidden by the Thorne family for decades. The weight of blood. Liar broke when he heard. Collapsed into his chair, eyes hollow. All of it was a lie. My childhood, my family, my marriage, even my grief. I took his hand. But your healing was real, and we are real. The quiet day after. The next morning, Liar didn't leave the bed. Not for coffee, not for calls, not for anything. He just stared at the ceiling, one hand resting over his heart. I lay beside him, fingers tracing the lines on his palm. Say something, I whispered. He finally breathed out. I don't know who I am anymore. And I told him the only truth I knew. You're the man who stayed. You're the man who learned how to love me. A letter to himself. I found it later, written in his sharp handwriting, left on the nightstand. To the boy I was. You weren't weak for crying. You weren't unlovable. You were lied to. And it's okay to start over. I cried. Because healing isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's a letter no one else will ever see. The baby's first word. We were sitting on the floor. Blocks. Books. Laughter. And suddenly, Illyra Grace pointed to Liar and said clearly, Dada. He froze, eyes wide. Then they filled with tears, quiet, trembling tears. He pulled her into his arms and held her like he was holding his entire world. She said it. He whispered. She chose me. The final confrontation. We went to the elder Calloway estate, faced the man who had twisted to generations of lives. He didn't deny the blood ties, didn't even flinch when we told him we knew. He only smiled and said, pain builds stronger empires than love. Liar stepped forward, voice calm, hands steady. Then maybe it's time to burn yours down. And we walked away not as victims, but as survivors, as a family. The day the court ruled, the investigation took weeks. The press tore through the story like wolves. But when the ruling came, it was clear. All assets stolen from Illyra were returned. All threats from the Calloway family ceased. And our names were cleared forever. We didn't celebrate with champagne. We celebrated by going home and finally sleeping peacefully. Leora's baby. Leora had her first child that spring, a boy with green eyes and the loudest cry we'd ever heard. She named him Theo, after her mother's favorite poet. When Liar held him, I saw something melt in his eyes again. Another life, he whispered. Another chance. And that's what family meant now. New chances. Arya's gallery. He surprised me. Rented out a gallery in the heart of the city. Hung every painting I'd ever made. From sadness. From love. From war and healing. He stood beside me at the opening night. You turned pain into art, he said softly. Now let the world see it. The night under the stars. We returned to the rooftop where I once stood alone in the early days. This time, he came too. Blankets. Wine. Peace. He traced the stars with his finger and said, if someone had told me I'd fall in love with my wife after I married her, I would have laughed. I leaned into him. And now, he smiled. Now I wouldn't change a single day of it. The unexpected visitor. One rainy afternoon, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find a young woman soaked and shivering. Her eyes were fierce, but scared. I'm sorry to bother you, she said, but I need help. She hesitated, then whispered, Liar's half-sister, family secrets. She introduced herself as Maya, a daughter from Liar's father's secret past. She had nowhere else to go, and no one who would believe her. Liar was shocked, but I saw something soften in him. Family isn't just blood, he said. It's who you choose to protect. The new threat. Maya brought news. Calloway's empire was far from finished. A hidden partner was rising. Someone darker. Someone more ruthless. And this time, they were after all of us. United front. We prepared. Together. Liar. Me. Leora. Maya. Even Theo and baby Grace. No more secrets. No more divisions. Just a family. Ready to fight for love, for legacy, for life. The final battle begins. The night was black. The estate was silent, but our hearts were loud. As shadows moved in the distance, Liar held my hand tight. Whatever happens next, We face it together. I nodded, because this was more than a marriage. This was a promise, a vow, a love that would not break. Shadows at the gate. The estate's gates rattled under the weight of the approaching threat. Guards were ready. Lights blazed. But in the shadows, something darker moved. Liar's voice was calm but fierce. Remember what we're fighting for. No one breaks this family. The first strike. It came fast. Explosions, chaos, glass shattered, screams filled the air, but we stayed together. Maya shielded Theo. Leora led the children to safety, and Liar stood at my side, a warrior, a husband, the heart of the storm. We found ourselves cornered in the library. Bookshelves toppled, fire flickered. I looked at Liar. His eyes said everything. We survive. He kissed me fierce and desperate. And we fought not just for our lives, but for the love that had grown stronger through every storm. Dawn's light. As the first light broke the horizon, the attackers retreated. Bruised but unbroken, we stood among the ruins. Liar pulled me close. This house, this family is ours. And I knew, no matter what came next, we would face it together. A new beginning. Weeks later, rebuilding began. The scars remained, but so did the laughter. Elira Grace ran through the halls. Theo's laughter filled the rooms, and Liar whispered, "We are not just surviving, we are living, rebuilding walls, rebuilding hearts." The estate was quiet, no alarms, no fires, no fear, just dust, hammers, paint, and peace. Liar stood beside a wall where flames once scorched through, now being repaired. He took my hand and said, "Every brick we lay now isn't just to rebuild the house. It's to rebuild our story." And I knew he was right. Her first drawing, Elira Grace, now two, sat in the art room beside me. She held a crayon blue and drew circles and swirls on a paper, then pointed, "Mama, Dada, me." Tears filled my eyes, because in her innocent way, she captured what we had become. Not a contract, not a broken marriage, but a real family, a new beginning. The proposal that was real. One late evening, as the moon glowed over our rebuilt garden, Liar got down on one knee, again, but this time it wasn't for business. No cameras, no contracts, just him, a velvet ring box, and the man I had come to love completely. "Will you marry me again, Arya? For real? This time, no secrets, no pain, just forever." I didn't cry. I laughed joyful and bright, and whispered, "Yes. Again and always." The real wedding. It was small. Leora cried. Maya walked me down the aisle. Baby Theo tried to eat the flowers. Elira Grace threw petals and called them fairy snow. And Liar, he cried. For the first time since I met him, he let them fall. And this time, they weren't tears of loss. They were tears of love finally fulfilled. A letter to Elira. On the night of our new wedding, I wrote her a letter. "Elira, the woman I once envied, feared, followed. You loved him once. You saved him from the beginning. But now, I promise to protect what you couldn't. I will love him for us both." I left the letter at her grave, and the wind carried it away. The honeymoon that was ours. We escaped to a small villa in the countryside. No bodyguards, no reporters, no ghosts, just trees, wind, wildflowers, and us. Liar cooked. I painted. We danced under the stars with no music. And one night, lying under the vines, he whispered, "Thank you for staying." I smiled, my head against his chest. "Thank you for becoming someone worth staying for." Baby news again. I hadn't been feeling well. Tired, dizzy, emotional. It wasn't stress. It was joy. A second child, growing inside me. When I told him, Liar fell to his knees again, just like he had with Elira Grace. But this time, he laughed. "You're giving me the life I never thought I'd deserve." I cupped his face. "You earned it. Every heartbeat of it." The book. He handed it to me one morning, wrapped in white ribbon. Inside, our story, written in his words. She married me because she had no choice. I fell in love with her because I finally understood what love was. This book is for the woman who made me human. I sobbed and kissed every page, because this love was no longer fiction. Maya's goodbye. Maya left for university abroad, independent, stronger, freer. She hugged me tight before boarding the plane. "You gave me something I never had," she whispered. "A sister." And in that moment, I realized, love doesn't just heal one person, it spreads. Letters to our children. We began writing letters to our children, one each year, not to open now, but later, when they're older, when they're heartbroken, or confused, or in love. And every letter ended with the same line. You were born from a love that was built through fire, and you will always be made of light. The sun is born. It happened in spring, in the same room where Lyra Grace was born. The moment I heard his cry, something inside me cracked open. Lyra held him with trembling hands. Our son. He named him Aurelian Golden One, because he's our light after all that darkness. And I whispered, welcome to a love that will never fail you. A birthday promise. On Lyra Grace's 3rd birthday, we invited everyone, friends, staff, family, even the chef who made her favorite strawberry cake. Lyra picked her up and said to the crowd, she saved me. She gave me a reason to become more than the man I was. And I promise, in front of all of you, my children will never feel unloved the way I once did. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden. The silent painting. I painted a canvas with no faces, just colors. Gold, silver, navy blue, wine red. I left it in the hallway. Months passed. And then, one day, I found a note beneath it, in Lyra's writing. This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It looks like how I feel when I'm with you. A visit from the past. One foggy evening, someone arrived at the gates. A frail woman with sad eyes. Lyra's mother. She hadn't spoken to anyone in years, but when she saw Lyra Grace, her knees gave out. She held my hand and whispered, she looks like her. And I replied, gently, she's named after her. But she's raised with the love Lyra always deserved. A ring recast. Lyra took his old wedding ring, the one from our contract, and melted it down. He recast it into 2 thin bands, one for Lyra Grace when she turns 18, and one for Aurelian. Inside both, engraved words, born from pain, protected by love. It was his way of turning old wounds into protection for the future. The anniversary he forgot. For the first time in years, he forgot. No gift, no flowers, no kiss at midnight, just meetings and silence. I didn't say anything. I just watched. And that night, when I went to bed, I found the room lit with candles. A book sat on my pillow. Title, A Million Ways I Remember You. Inside, he had written every memory we ever made in his own handwriting. I didn't forget. I was finishing this. I cried so softly. He didn't hear, but he felt it. In the way I kissed him that night. Her first crush. Lyra Grace came home one day, blushing and awkward. His name is Jules, and he smiled at me. Lyra froze, put down his glass. I'm going to need a full background check on this, Jules. I laughed for 20 minutes, because seeing the Ice King panic over his daughter's first crush was the most human thing I'd ever seen. The award. I received my first International Art Award. We flew to Paris. When they called my name, I couldn't breathe. But Lyra stood and clapped before anyone else. And when I walked off stage, he hugged me and whispered, I told you the world needed your colors, but she's raised with the love Lyra always deserved. A ring recast. Lyra took his old wedding ring, the one from our contract, and melted it down. He recast it into 2 thin bands, one for Lyra Grace when she turns 18, and one for Aurelian. Inside both, engraved words, born from pain, protected by love. It was his way of turning old wounds into protection for the future. The anniversary he forgot. For the first time in years, he forgot. No gift, no flowers, no kiss at midnight, just meetings and silence. I didn't say anything. I just watched. And that night, when I went to bed, I found the room lit with candles. A book sat on my pillow. Title, A Million Ways I Remember You. Inside, he had written every memory we ever made in his own handwriting. I didn't forget. I was finishing this. I cried so softly. He didn't hear, but he felt it. In the way I kissed him that night. Her first crush. Lyra Grace came home one day, blushing and awkward. His name is Jules, and he smiled at me. Lyra froze, put down his glass. I'm going to need a full background check on this, Jules. I laughed for 20 minutes, because seeing the Ice King panic over his daughter's first crush was the most human thing I'd ever seen. The award. I received my first International Art Award. We flew to Paris. When they called my name, I couldn't breathe. But Lyra stood and clapped before anyone else. And when I walked off stage, he hugged me and whispered, I told you the world needed your colors. And for once, I believed it. Theo's illness. Theo Leora's son fell ill one winter. A high fever, hospitals, uncertainty. And through it all, we became one body, one family. Liar slept on hospital floors. I held Leora while she cried, and when Theo smiled again, it felt like we all got a second life. The children's letters. One day, Elira, Grace and Aurelian gave us envelopes. Inside were hand-drawn cards. To the best mama and dada, because you made home the safest place. Liar read his twice, silently. Then he stood up and said, "We need a vacation. Just us." And for the first time in years, we vanished. Just for a week. To be nothing but two people in love again. The final winter. Snow fell thick that year. Elira Grace was nearly 9. Aurelian was 6. We were older. Not old, just quieter. Liar and I would sit by the window and watch them build snow castles. No drama. No enemies. Just peace. And one night, as the snow danced in the moonlight, he looked at me and said, "Do you know when I truly fell in love with you?" I smiled. When I stayed, he shook his head. "No, it was the day you looked at my pain and didn't flinch." The legacy room. We built a room, not for business, not for show, but a library. Every book we loved, every painting I made, every letter we wrote to our children. Liar called it the heart room, because it held the soul of our family. When guests asked what it was, we simply said, "Our story lives here." The last page. One quiet evening, I sat by the fire and opened the first contract we ever signed. The fake marriage, the business deal, the beginning. I read the final clause aloud. "This arrangement shall be null and void if either party falls in love." I laughed softly, because it had expired long, long ago. Then Liar, standing behind me, said, with a grin, "Guess we broke the contract." I looked up at him, heart full. "No, we rewrote it." And so, he married me to protect a memory, to keep a promise, to survive. But in the end, he loved me to live, to hope, to become someone new. And I loved him, because he didn't just let me in, he rebuilt himself around me. This wasn't a story about contracts, or secrets, or grief. It was a story about two broken people, who chose each other, who chose to stay, who chose to love.